The Dentalpreneur Podcast. Okay, doctor, it's time to put down that handpiece. You're listening to the show dedicated to helping dentists get their lives back. It's time to decrease your stress, increase your profitability, and regain your passion. Now introducing your host, Dr. Mark Costas.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Dentalpreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mark Costas. Hey, friends. How are you doing out there today? All right. It's feeling nice spring outside, but I feel like it's still kind of the tail end of ski season. So I was just talking about snowboarding / skiing with this guy. He's a multiple time guest on the podcast. I'm happy to welcome him back. Let's welcome Steven Fey back to the podcast. He's the VP of Business Development for Maverick Dental Lab. Maverick serves practices in 50 states and cases ranging from fixed and removable to implant and cosmetic. Steven, how you doing, buddy?
Mark, I'm great. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, man. You're coming at us live from Winter Park, Colorado. It's one of the great spots that I love to do some outside winter type sports. What a cute little community that is. I think it's kind of under the radar, which is what I like about it. It's like it's a little bit further tucked away, so it's not super easy to get to, which keeps the crowds down a little bit. But man, they got some good slopes up there.
You know, it's great. To your point, there's not a ton of people here. And so you're not waiting in lines very long, and the runs are great. You know, it's a little bit of an odd season, as anybody who skis that's listening might know. I think it's Colorado's, it's the least amount of snow that Colorado's seen in 50 years. Yeah. So odd winter, but, you know, once you get up to altitude, I think base up here is around 9,500 feet and tops, around 12,000. So, once you're up that high, there actually is a good amount of snow, and we should get 16 inches tonight. So
dang, that's some fresh stuff, man. It's been a minute for that kind of snowfall anywhere in the continental United States. So good for you, man. Congratulations.
They were definitely due for it, and that's one of those things you just can't plan for. That's for sure.
God, you guys timed it just perfectly. Cool, man. So what's new with you? How's things going over at Maverick? You guys are based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We've gone over the history of the company before on the podcast. Maybe you can give us the 25-second version of the history of the company and what makes you guys a little bit different.
I'd be happy to. So, we've been around now for coming up on our 24th year. So, we were started by it was my father that started it with his business partner, Larry Albensi, and they were just two good friends, long time ago. And they were actually, my father sold burrs and rotary instruments to Larry's Dental Lab. And they joined forces and decided to build a lab, and it grew over the years. And, we've been blessed to grow beyond the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania region. So we're working coast to coast now. And, we're so happy to be working with, Dental Success Network and the Dental Success community as well. So certainly a lot's grown. We've got about 170 or 175 people right now. We'll close on our actual first acquisition of a new lab coming up shortly. So that lab's going to be all, full arch and surgical guides, aesthetic. So we're really excited to bring that into our portfolio of an offering as a dental lab.
Oh, that's really cool. That's really good to know, actually. So is it going to be under the Maverick umbrella, or is it going to be named what it was called prior to acquisition?
Yeah, so it's going to be named what it was prior to acquisition, at least for, maybe a year or two, until we slowly sort of introduce the Maverick brand. That's one of those things is, you don't want to do things too quick. Mm-hmm. It's, they have their clientele and technicians, and, we want to make sure it's just a nice, gradual transition.
Yeah. I don't know if you knew this, but I'm co-owner of Colorado Surgical Institute, which is an all-on-X surgical treatment and, basically facility. We have 7 events per year, and we teach all on X, hands-on all on X, full digital workflow, anything surgically related, IV sedation, cosmetic stuff too. So you guys should make it out there at some point when we're doing one of our all on X trainings.
Mark, we would love to. Yeah, the owner of that lab's a fascinating individual. He actually, and I can't get into details too much, but South African gentleman. He's very, very knowledgeable on these cases and has worked, in the practices with docs, and he's built out a great team. So, we'd have a lot of fun with that. I knew there was an involvement there, but I didn't realize you were co-owner. So
yeah. I found it out with Dr. Dan Brisky and Dr. Taher Dune. They are some of the most gifted surgeons I've ever seen. Wow. I've literally stood over the shoulder to hundreds and hundreds of arches that they've done. We typically do between 16 and 25 arches every weekend when we're there. So people are putting in, 12 to 25 implants as students there. We have the best mentors in the world. We typically have between 10 and 12 mentors from all over the country that are advanced surgical kind of mentors / instructors. It's pretty amazing.
Those cases are they're game changer for the patient and the practice. So totally. That's fantastic.
Totally. So tell me about your workflow. How much are you guys relying on AI and technology these days? Things are changing so rapidly in the lab industry. I mean, just since I've known you guys, which is, a handful of years, things have changed significantly as far as design and certain aspects of the fabrication process as well. What's different?
It's incredible how much has changed. I would say when I was a kid and I was in the lab, because I grew up in this, everything was done by hand, and you have this knowledge of the morphology and the function. Obviously we still do, but you're etching it into the wax and you're casting it. And now we're able to run with proposals and design that are very, very close to what the final outcome will be. And so, that's definitely advanced. I would say AI design as a whole is getting there, but it definitely needs some work. So, for any labs that are doing it, there's still a good amount of quality control that's needed in editing. If the case is textbook, great. AI can do a good job if it's like a single unit crown or, maybe a 3-unit bridge. Mm-hmm. But once you get into larger cases, or cases where the bites may be a little bit not so textbook, that's where maybe AI isn't a great fit. But the biggest area where we see AI changing things is in the entry of cases. So, there's 16 different, scanners that are common in the market. And, a lot of labs are spending time just inputting that data into the lab. And there's obviously some small amount of human error that can exist with that. And AI is able to come in and basically just pull that information, whether it's an integration or even if it's a RX, and it can read just through character recognition and sort cases, triage them throughout the workflow. So it's a lot of behind the scenes stuff. We really like to have our people focused on the aesthetics of the cases, forward facing customer service, so that we don't lose that human touch. Mm-hmm. And it's a good way to scale, really. It's a good way to get rid of the redundant things in the workflow.
Yeah. Is everything fabricated right there at your facility in Pittsburgh?
I would say about 80% of the work is. The only work that isn't is PFMs. Those are super labor intensive. And, a lot of times practices want an economy level PFM.
What's a PFM, Steve?
Porcelain fused to metal. It's funny because, we still have, I would say out of our fixed crown and bridge work, we have 20 to 30% of our fixed crown bridge work
stop it.
PFM. I'm serious. You've
got to be kidding me. What percentage of traditional impression material crowns do you do?
So we track this every single week because it changes. 70% of incoming cases is digital.
Okay.
30% of it is PVS at this point.
Still so 30%.
A lot of them have gone over to digital, but it seems like there's still
crazy.
Docs.
PFMs and goop and impression material still, huh?
Yep.
Still happening.
Still there are some labs that they've said, hey, we're putting our foot down, we're drawing the line in the sand, and we're only doing digital work, and we're not accepting the PVS impressions. But we'll take the work. If there's docs out there that are still doing PVS, if it's good work, we're happy to work with you.
Dude, that's crazy to me. Digital. That's a big percentage. 30% is still a big percentage.
It is. It is. But, you've got to figure if you have a scanner, you're not maybe necessarily scanning every single case, right?
True.
So
That's
if it's
true.
a really sub G margin or something like that.
That's true. We always had it still. We always had the
So,
goop still on hand for those rare occasions where super sub G, just, you got to pack cord and pull all that stuff back. It's hard for the scanner to read it. I get it. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. So it's still there, but it's starting to become a thing of the past.
Yeah. Cool, man. So tell me about all the full gamut of deliverables for you guys. So you guys do all crown and bridge, aesthetic, anterior cases, and then you guys do removable too, and implant supported.
Yeah, we do implant supported right now. And I alluded earlier to fixed full arch. Right now, we're not doing a lot of fixed full arch. We're mostly focused on, quadrant cases for, implants, and we do a lot of custom abutments. We can do tie bases too. But yeah, aesthetic work, a lot of our work has become zirconia these days. Zirconia has gotten so much better in the aesthetic zone, but we still do some EMAX too. Veneer cases, cosmetic is there. Honestly, removable is something that's been up in terms of sales for our dental lab. There's a lot of people looking for a good removable lab out there. A lot of these older removable technicians that own their own lab are folding up their lab, they're retiring. The average age is it's getting up there, and there's not many schools nationally that teach the craft. So there is a little bit more demand for removable labs as well.
Yeah, we always had a joke in dental school that all the denture techs or people that did any type of removable lab work, those guys were just submerged in monomer and acrylic dust for so many years that they just kind of go crazy. But it's a tough way to make a living. Listen, dude, when I'm in the DR every year, we do what we call jungle dentistry, and I'll do immediate dentures on the residents there that are fully edentulated if they want them. And I'll do 120 to 130 arches per week.
Wow.
Out there with
That's
me
incredible.
And a couple dental students and another doc. We'll just knock them out. And we're just, by the end of every day, we'll do 30 to 35 full arches, and we'll just be covered in acrylic dust and monomer. And that's just a week a year that I do that. I do a little bit in Fiji as well, but like doing that all day, every single day for an entire career, dude. I don't know how those guys surround themselves with that type of toxic material for so long. It's crazy.
Oh, I know. Luckily now for us too, I mean, there is just such a shortage of those type of technicians. So digital dentures are, a huge, it's a huge help to us, honestly, because the demand's there. The technicians and the supply side of it is dwindling. So, being able to design, these cases in 3Shape or exocad, and then print them, gives us a great result, and it's a little more scalable, to be honest.
Yeah, totally. So tell me about the workflow there. So the dentist has a fully edentulated patient. Mrs. Smith comes in. How do you? What records are they sending you in order to do a completely digitized denture? How are they getting, vertical dimension and all that stuff?
Yeah. So, what's funny is there's a few misnomers when it comes to digital dentures. If docs aren't doing it, a lot of people think, okay, hey, I got a scanner. I can just scan the edentulous arch and, maybe I can get a 2-appointment denture, but typically not the case. To border mold, you still really need, impression material. And, just to capture that soft tissue, you're not going to capture that with a scanner to get appropriate borders. VDO too, really you need to have wax rims. So, I tell people if they really want, they can scan the edentulous arch so that we can at least get, custom tray or wax rim step. And then from there, you can do an intaglio wash and you can capture the borders there, get a good impression, capture the VDO, make your, midline mark, canine marks and everything like that. And then proceed as if it was a normal denture. And then the next step is a tri-indenture, like it would normally be, but we print the tri-indenture. So, we're basically looking at all of those landmarks that you gave us. And then, okay, we're going to print it. And if there's anything off with that, it's just adjusting it with a handpiece. If it's the occlusion, or even if it's the midline, and you have to take a round number 8 burr and just mark the midline, that's all we need to get a couple of adjustments, and then we can take it to final. And a lot of times, that try-in is pretty dead on, and we're able just to print the final and go to the final from there without any adjustment.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I like that. The slam dunk, though, is the existing denture patient, right?
Yes.
Where they have the existing dentures, and that can actually be a two-pointer, a pointer, right?
Yes. And so that's the big one. That basically, you've got all your landmarks right there. And I mean, for anybody listening that does some amount of removable in their practice, you've got patients where they've got old dentures and they love them. And that's the thing about them is, they're like a pair of worn jeans that you just love. You've loved them over the years, and getting that new denture typically for them is a little bit of a pain point for most docs. Mm-hmm. So, this is a really nice opportunity to just take all of those landmarks from that denture and then really just duplicate it and make sure that, we get a good fresh impression of the intaglio and we can reproduce it. But yeah, that's a slam dunk. It's, really just one, two step.
Yeah, that's cool. So, how's growth for you guys? What's it been looking like year over year? It feels as though, and if I feel about a lot of industries, especially within dentistry, that it's a more and more cluttered marketplace. There's more and more consolidation happening in the lab industry. I know several labs, smaller labs that I was affiliated with that have sold to private equity groups in a consolidation wave. So how's growth been for you guys? I'm sure that you've been approached many times to get acquired.
Yeah, we definitely, we talk about it. I mean, we probably get approached maybe once a month. There's larger labs out there, and there's PE groups certainly that would love to buy a lab at around our size. There's sort of a sweet spot there. Mm-hmm. But we're really interested in staying independent. We built something awesome here. Obviously, I work really well with my father and his business partner, our business partner. And, we're poised for just growing it sustainably in the future and growing it, responsibly. I think, when you look at a lab, at least for the labs that are doing things domestically, you really have to be responsible about the growth. You can't grow 50% year over year typically, unless you're a new lab and you're smaller, because, you've got to hire on employees, you've got to train people, and you've got to make sure that it's just really well run, and that, we're operating as well as we are for the cases that we're delivering, whether we have, 10 employees or if we have 175. So, for us, we had some higher growth years. I would say from 2020 to mid 2024, we grew about 20 to 25%, which was, and that was each year.
Wow.
And so we experienced some awesome growth in those years. And part of that was, I think after COVID, there were a lot of docs that were doing more work in their practice organically. So we had some organic growth because docs were trying to make up for some lost time. And, there was a lot of stimulus money out there and, in the patients' checkbooks. Mm-hmm. So that certainly helped things. I would say in the past year and a half, it's slowed down a touch, which is nice for us because, when you slow down just a touch, you're able to look at all the different systems in your company and refine things or build in new offerings or, really innovate. And so there's a lot of changes like we talked about with AI that are happening very live right now that, if we were growing at a 25% cap, it'd be a little bit harder to implement some of those things. So, yeah. It's nice to have a year that's like a settling year, which mm-hmm. is sort of like what we've called this year. Mm-hmm. But, I think some of what's slowed down is we're seeing a slightly lower spend per dentist in the past year. So I don't know if you've talked to docs that, see that in their practice, Mark, but, certainly there's a little bit of a hygiene shortage that can be a part of it. There's a lot going on in the world that can make people sort of push treatment out. And so we've talked to a lot of labs, and we talked to labs at the Chicago Midwinter where they said the same thing. Things are just a little bit slower this year. So still good growth, but, a little bit slower.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is. There has been a kind of a difference in consumer confidence. I think consumer confidence is a little bit waning because of all the distractions out there right now. Regarding the hygiene shortage, I mean, you're preaching to the choir here. There's 20,000 plus open hygiene positions right now. There's only about 190,000 active hygienists in the country. There's 205,000 active dentists in the country right now. And we're supposed to be, us consultants say, you should be 2 to 1 in your practice. So that's 2 hygienists to every doctor, and we're barely 1 to 1. So, and they're not creating any new dental hygiene schools. So the hygienists, when you're looking at the supply demand curve, it's greatly in the favor of the hygienist right now. So they're calling the ball. They're calling their hours. They're calling their salaries. So right now, all the leverage is in favor of the hygienist right now. There's something that needs to drastically change the way things are set up. The amount of hygienists that we are turning out is insufficient for the growth of the actual dental provider population. So we're kind of in a pickle right now because nothing has been planned to increase the number of hygienists that are graduating. And within the next 5 years, we're expected to get between 25 and 35% retraction in the existing hygiene base because of people that are retiring and leaving the profession. So this is only going to get worse. So we have, I'm open to suggestions, but the way that it currently is set up with the hygiene licensing, what assistants are restricted from doing, we're going to have to figure it out, or else the model has to change completely. It can't be 2 hygienists per every doctor. It can't be, we can't have the reliance on hygiene that we do right now. Some of the younger doctors, if this continues, are going to have to open up their minds to doing some of the hygiene within the dental practices. Something's got to change.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly don't have a magic bullet answer for any of it, but I think maybe a combination of all the above. I mean, practices have to adapt to it. And, if there's assistants that take on a little bit of that role, maybe that's something to look at. But, practices just have to adapt to it. It's, there's challenges. I mean, dental labs have their challenges too, but what I think it's all relative too, and it's funny because I was talking to one of my favorite people in the industry. His name's Anton Wolf, and he owns a company called Argon. They're a metal refining company. They're also one of the top distributors of zirconia to dental labs in the United States. And, he said to me, he asked me how growth was. And I said, it's a little bit slower than the past few years. And I said, it was, we grew at about 7% last year. And he said, well, Steve, that's great. The market for dental labs right now, he's like, we're down by 3%. In terms of just dental labs in general and sales for dental labs and dental lab growth. So if the market's down by 3% and you're up by 7%, you're actually up by 10%.
Yeah, exactly.
So, it's more of a mental reframe than it is anything. I had a little more pep in my step after, looking at it that way. So,
yeah. So tell me, what's the secret then? Why are you guys growing when other labs are retracting?
You know what? We really just focus on the customer experience. We implemented a great position called the Client Success Manager position. We have tech advisors that collaborate with the doctors really, really well, whether it's on cases or just the relationship as a whole. A lot of labs look at things transactionally, and it's just a case in the box. And, when you're a small lab, if you're a smaller lab, you're really having a one-to-one relationship with your doctors that you work with. And we really try to reproduce that as a lab. And that's one of the biggest reasons why we're successful. We've got a retired dentist on staff and, he just gets it. And, there's so many docs that need some help on a case or maybe they reach out to him because they want a treatment plan a little bit. And he's just a wealth of knowledge. So I think having assets like that in the lab is huge for the doc.
Yeah, I love it. So you guys are going to be at the upcoming Dental Success Summit. You guys are always huge supporters. June 11th through 13th at the PGA, the Omni PGA in Frisco, Texas. I can't wait to see you guys. You're doing something really fun this year. I want to talk about for a little bit. You guys are giving away a brand new convertible Corvette at the summit. So somebody at the summit is going to be very, very happy when they leave. They can either have it delivered or you're going to drive it off the lot. So tell us a little bit about this giveaway. And the car is actually going to be there.
Yeah, we have, Mark. We've supported the summit for a number of years now, and it's just such a fantastic event. And
Thanks, man.
we looked at it, and I think this car giveaway, the Corvette giveaway, hits on a number of cylinders, no pun intended there. But I think those being it's a great event, and it's a nice addition to your event. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it's a great way to say thank you for all of the cases that you've entrusted to Maverick Dental over the years, and just the general partnership with the dental success community. So, thank you. And then
man.
B, this is obviously some great exposure for the dental lab. Our thought is that people may try the lab because of the car, and it gets you some chances to win. But they'll stay because, they love the experience with our dental lab.
Yeah.
And, that's just a genuine sentiment. And then C, we're big fans of your keynote speaker, Gino Wickman, and he has a book called Traction, as and many of your viewers may know, that talks about using EOS, entrepreneurial operating system, as a point from getting from point A to B in a faster fashion, whether it's your practice or your business. And, I think this is the perfect embodiment of that, is, a nice Corvette.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited. We integrate EOS into a lot of our different businesses, and a ton of our mastermind members inside DSI utilize EOS. He was just one of those guys that I was like, oh man, if we could get him, it would be a slam dunk to get him as a keynote speaker. So I'm super stoked. I'm going to be geeking out on stage, just asking him questions. I'm very excited to rub shoulders with him and get some selfies, have him sign some of my books and stuff. But it's a really nice, natural kind of fit for whatever kind of small business that you run. It just makes perfect sense. There's so much common sense, and like, oh yeah, duh. Well, of course, that's the way that it is as far as the way that you run a business. But he has this method and this framework that's just very, very helpful from anywhere from 5 to 500 employees. It's very, very helpful. But man, I'm excited. We've never given away a car at a summit before. This is cool.
Well, we're honored for it to be the first.
How did you guys decide a Corvette?
It's just a beautiful car. They did the redesign on it, a number of years back, and it is super fast. It's gorgeous, and I think for
American
some
made
in the group, what's that?
American made, American muscle.
I think for some docs in the group, you might have a nice car like a Porsche or a BMW or something like that. But there's a lot of docs in the group too that probably don't buy a sports car for themselves. And, it's an awesome opportunity just to get something that you maybe wouldn't have purchased for yourself.
Yeah, I love it. That's cool, man. So how do people sign up to win this beautiful car?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways. So number one, obviously sending cases to the lab can get you tickets. There's a limit of, no matter what method you use, there's a limit of 10 tickets per month.
Per month?
Yes, per month.
Oh, okay.
So you can't stack up 300 tickets in a month, but you can get 10 tickets in a month. And we've got a few months till the summit.
Okay.
And then number two, any registrant for the Dental Success Summit is eligible for a ticket. So, your team will be sending out an email basically to redeem that free ticket. And then C, there is an alternative method of entry. So with any sweepstakes or giveaway, you have to have an alternative method of entry that is no purchase required. So the details of that are basically listed at maverickdental.com /DSS car giveaway.
Well, I hope that whoever wins this car is actually going to be there in person. That would be so anticlimactic if everybody had their ticket and they were just ready to be called, and it was somebody that wasn't even there. That'd be a bummer. So I highly encourage you to get to the summit and get as many tickets as you can.
Yeah. So there will be 5 finalists, and we'll pull those 5 finalists at the end of May ahead of the summit. So if you're one of those 5 finalists and you're not registered to attend the summit, we'll certainly give you a call, and we'll be happy to arrange any travel or registration it takes to get you out there.
Oh,
somebody
that's cool.
from your practice out there. So
that's awesome.
Just a nice gesture from Maverick.
Yeah. A nice consolation prize of staying at a pretty awesome resort.
Absolutely, right? PGA in Frisco doesn't sound too bad.
No, it's pretty awesome. It's a pretty awesome place. Well, thanks, man. How do people give your lab a try? So, I mean, for no other reason, get your 10 entries, right? So, how do people that if they aren't a current Maverick Lab user, how they start? Is there a starter kit? What's the process?
Yeah, so if you call our lab, 866-294-7444, or go to our website, there's an area to request a starter kit. And that's really the best way. We'll send out a starter kit. Certainly all the information about our labs in there, some lab case boxes in case you need those for those PVS impressions, God forbid. That'll be everything you need to get started. We'll have a setup call just to talk about your lab needs, and we'll be off to the races.
So it's maverickdental.com. And you can just click on new case or what? How do you do it?
Yeah, so there's a drop down for new client and then starter kit.
Sweet.
And that'll be the best area.
Well, all right, man. Hey, thank you for taking the time out of your vacation. You're there in beautiful Winter Park and you're talking to me. You should get back out there. Got time for a couple more runs. Yeah, man.
Well, I definitely will. There's definitely a few more runs in the tank. This is day 4, so quads are getting a little tired. It was nice to take a little break and talk to you.
Yeah, for sure. All right, buddy. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your continued support. I can't wait to see you in June. I'm sure I'll talk to you before that, but appreciate your time today.
Likewise, Mark. Thank you so much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the VP of Business Development for Maverick Dental Lab, Steven Fey.